At just 19 years old, he destroyed Argentina at the World Cup. At 23, he scored a hat-trick in the biggest game football has to offer. And somehow, people still questioned whether he was truly the future of football. Because when your name is Kylian Mbappé, being great is never enough. You have to become legendary. For years, the football world searched for the player who would eventually take over after Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. Some said it would never happen. Others believed football would never see another global superstar capable of carrying the sport alone. Then Mbappé arrived. Faster than anyone, more fearless than anyone, and under more pressure than any young player the game had ever seen. He became the face of France before he could even legally rent a car in America. He was handed billions in expectations, compared to the greatest players alive, and treated like football's chosen one before most teenagers even finished school. But behind the trophies, the fame, and the superstar image, there was another story. A story about obsession. Because long before the World Cup finals, before Paris Saint-Germain, before Real Madrid desperately chased him for years, Mbappé was just a quiet kid from the rough suburbs outside Paris, with posters of Cristiano Ronaldo covering every wall in his bedroom. While other kids dreamed of becoming footballers, Mbappé studied greatness. He memorized Ronaldo's movements, copied his celebrations, watched his highlights over and over again late into the night. And somewhere deep inside his mind, the young boy from Bondy truly believed something almost impossible, that one day, the entire world would know his name too. What nobody realized back then was that this kid wasn't just dreaming of becoming the next Cristiano Ronaldo. He was preparing to become football's next global icon, and the journey that took him there would change the sport forever. Long before the world saw the goals, the trophies, and the headlines, Kylian Mbappé was just a skinny little kid running through the streets of Bondy, a tough suburb just outside Paris. This wasn't the glamorous side of France tourists see in movies. Bondy was loud, rough, competitive. For many kids growing up there, football wasn't just entertainment, it was escape. And from the moment Mbappé could walk, football became his entire world. His father, Wilfried Mbappé, worked as a football coach in the local community, while his mother, Faiza, was a former professional handball player. Sports surrounded him every single day. Discipline surrounded him. Expectations surrounded him. But even then, nobody could have imagined what was coming, because Kylian wasn't normal. Most children played football after school. Mbappé studied it. He watched matches constantly, replayed goals in his mind, practiced movements alone for hours. Every sprint, every touch, every finish had purpose behind it. And above all else, there was Cristiano Ronaldo. The walls of Mbappé's bedroom were completely covered with Ronaldo posters. Real Madrid shirts hung around the room like trophies. He copied Ronaldo's hairstyles, his body language, even the way he walked on the pitch. To Mbappé, Cristiano wasn't just a footballer. He was proof that obsession could turn into greatness. And the scary part was, Mbappé already had that same obsession burning inside him. By the age of 10, local defenders in youth football already hated playing against him. Coaches couldn't believe how explosive he looked compared to kids his age. The speed was unreal. The confidence was different. Even older players struggled to stop him once he started running at them. But what made Mbappé truly terrifying wasn't just talent. It was the way he believed in himself. There was no fear in his game, no hesitation. Even as a child, he played like somebody who already knew he belonged on the biggest stages in football. And soon, the biggest clubs in Europe would start noticing the kid from Bondy. As Mbappé kept destroying youth defenses around Paris, word about him started spreading fast. At first, it was local coaches talking quietly about a special kid from Bondy. Then academy scouts started showing up. Then Europe started paying attention. Because by the time Mbappé entered the Clairefontaine Academy, the same legendary system that helped develop some of France's greatest players, it became obvious he wasn't just another talented teenager. He was different. Everything about him felt faster than everyone else. His acceleration looked unnatural. His confidence looked almost arrogant. Defenders would panic the second he started running at them, because once Mbappé found space, the play was already over. And the craziest part? He was still just a kid. Soon, some of the biggest clubs in world football began trying to pull him away from France. Chelsea invited him to England. Paris Saint-Germain wanted the future French superstar close to home. But one club stood above the rest. Real Madrid. The club Mbappé had dreamed about his entire childhood. The club Cristiano Ronaldo played for. And eventually, the impossible happened. As a teenager, Mbappé traveled to Madrid for a visit that would become one of the most iconic moments of his early life. He toured the facilities, trained with young players, and then came face to face with the man whose posters covered his bedroom walls. Cristiano Ronaldo. For most kids his age, that moment alone would have been enough to change their life forever. But for Mbappé, it only made the dream more dangerous. Photos from that visit would later go viral across the football world. The smiling teenager standing beside Ronaldo looked like a fan meeting his hero. What nobody realized at the time was that football was looking at the future. Real Madrid wanted him immediately. Many people expected Mbappé to sign right there and begin his journey in Spain. But then something surprising happened. He walked away, not because he doubted Madrid, and not because he stopped idolizing Ronaldo. Mbappé simply believed he wasn't ready yet. He didn't want to disappear on a giant stage before becoming strong enough to dominate it. He wanted minutes. responsibility, pressure, a real chance to grow. So instead of choosing the biggest club in the world, Mbappé chose Monaco, and that decision would change football forever. When Kylian Mbappé arrived at Monaco, he wasn't treated like a superstar. He was just another young talent trying to survive in professional football. But that didn't last very long, because the second he stepped onto the pitch, people inside the club started realizing they were watching something abnormal. His speed didn't make sense. Defenders could be standing 5 yards ahead of him and still lose the race. Coaches began noticing that even experienced professionals looked nervous whenever Mbappé attacked open space. It felt like chaos followed him everywhere. And then, at just 16 years old, Monaco gave him his debut. In that moment, Mbappé became the youngest first-team player in the club's history, breaking a record once held by Thierry Henry, a French legend. Suddenly, the comparisons started exploding across Europe. But Mbappé didn't play like a teenager trying to impress people. He played like somebody trying to destroy them. The 2016-17 season became the year football truly met Kylian Mbappé. Every week, he looked more dangerous. Every month, he looked more unstoppable. Goals started flying in from everywhere. League One defenders couldn't handle his pace. His movement became impossible to predict. 1 second, he looked isolated on the wing. The next second, the ball was in the back of the net. But it wasn't just France watching anymore. Europe was watching now. And then came the Champions League, the tournament where young talents either disappear under pressure or announce themselves to the world. Mbappé chose the second option. Against Manchester City, he played without fear. Against Borussia Dortmund, he looked untouchable. Some of Europe's biggest defenders were being turned inside out by a teenager who wasn't even old enough to fully understand how massive these moments were supposed to feel. And yet, Mbappé looked completely calm. That was the terrifying part. There was no panic in him, no hesitation, no respect for reputations. He attacked elite defenders the same way he attacked kids back in Bondy. Relentlessly. Suddenly, football fans everywhere started asking the same question. How is someone this young already this good? By the end of the season, Monaco had shocked Europe by winning Ligue 1 and reaching the Champions League semifinals. Mbappé had become the most exciting young player on the planet. And just like that, the quiet kid with Ronaldo posters on his bedroom walls was no longer a hidden talent. He was football's next phenomenon. By 2018, Kylian Mbappé was no longer just a rising star. He was football's biggest mystery. Some people believed he could become the next great player of his generation. Others thought the hype had come too early. After all, football had seen wonder kids before. Teenagers explode onto the scene all the time. Most of them disappear once the pressure becomes real. But then the World Cup began. And suddenly, the pressure became bigger than anything Mbappé had ever experienced. France entered the tournament with enormous expectations. The squad was filled with stars. Pogba, Griezmann, Kanté, Varane. But somehow, all eyes kept drifting toward the youngest player on the team, the teenager with impossible speed, the teenager who played without fear, the teenager who looked like he belonged in moments far too big for his age. Then came Argentina, one of the most iconic matches of Mbappé's entire career. On one side was Lionel Messi, already a global legend desperately chasing the one trophy missing from his career. On the other side was a 19-year-old kid from Bondy. And for 90 minutes, Mbappé terrified the entire world. Every touch felt dangerous. Every sprint felt explosive. Argentina's defenders looked helpless trying to stop him. At one point, Mbappé picked up the ball deep inside his own half and exploded through the defense with terrifying speed, forcing a penalty after one of the fastest runs the tournament had ever seen. Then he scored. Then he scored again. And just like that, the football world stopped seeing Mbappé as the future. Because the future had already arrived. France defeated Argentina 4-3 inches, one of the greatest World Cup games ever played, and Mbappé became the youngest player since Pelé to score twice in a World Cup knockout match. At only 19 years old, the comparisons exploded overnight. Next Ronaldo. Next Thierry Henry, the future Ballon d'Or winner. But Mbappé wasn't finished yet. A few weeks later, he stepped onto the pitch for the World Cup final against Croatia with the entire planet watching. Most young players would have disappeared under that pressure. Mbappé looked completely calm. Then he scored in the final. 19 years old. World champion. Football history had changed forever. And in that moment, something became painfully clear to the rest of the world. The Messi and Ronaldo era would not last forever. Because a new superstar had arrived, and his name was Kylian Mbappé. After winning the World Cup, Kylian Mbappé stopped being just a football player. He became a symbol, the future of French football, the face of a generation, the player expected to dominate the sport after Messi and Ronaldo, and with that came something far more dangerous than defenders or trophies. Pressure, because in 2018, Mbappé made the biggest decision of his career so far. He joined Paris Saint-Germain. At first, it looked perfect. The biggest club in France had just signed the country's greatest young talent. Paris saw him as their prince. Fans believed he would finally bring the Champions League trophy the club had been chasing for years. But almost immediately, the pressure became overwhelming. PSG wasn't just a football club anymore. It was a global celebrity machine. Every missed chance became headlines. Every bad performance became controversy. Every body language moment became social media drama. and Mbappé was right in the center of it all. Then things became even more complicated, because PSG didn't just have Mbappé. They had Neymar. Later, they had Messi too. 3 superstars. 3 giant egos. 1 dressing room. And suddenly, football's golden boy was living inside chaos. The chemistry on the pitch never fully matched the expectations. Critics accused PSG of being more focused on celebrity culture than football. Fans across Europe mocked League One and called it a farmers' league. Every year, the same question returned. Can Mbappé actually do it on the biggest stage? For the first time in his life, doubt started following him everywhere. People questioned his mentality, questioned his leadership, questioned whether the fame had changed him. Some even accused him of becoming arrogant. But what most people failed to understand was how massive the expectations truly were. Mbappé wasn't carrying a normal football career. He was carrying an entire country's hopes. France expected him to become the next global icon. PSG expected him to deliver the Champions League. The media expected perfection every single week. And despite all the criticism, he kept producing. Goals, assists, trophies, magical moments. Year after year, Mbappé continued putting up unbelievable numbers while the spotlight around him became more brutal than ever. But then came the tournament that would define his legacy forever. The 2022 World Cup. And one night in Qatar would turn Kylian Mbappé from a superstar into something much bigger. The 2022 World Cup was supposed to belong to Lionel Messi. That was the story the world wanted. Messi finally completing football. Messi finally lifting the trophy. Messi finally becoming immortal. And for most of the final, that's exactly what it looked like. Argentina dominated France. Mbappé looked isolated, quiet, frustrated. For nearly 80 minutes, France were collapsing in front of the entire world. The defending champions looked exhausted, lifeless, completely overwhelmed by the pressure of the occasion. And then, Mbappé exploded. Out of nowhere, he scored a penalty. Less than 2 minutes later, he struck again. 1 touch, 1 finish, pure violence. In 97 seconds, Mbappé dragged France back from the dead and shocked the entire football world. The stadium transformed instantly. Argentina panicked. France suddenly believed again. And Mbappé looked unstoppable. But he still wasn't done. During extra time, after Messi scored again for Argentina, most players would have mentally broken. Mbappé responded with another goal. A hat-trick. In a World Cup final, at 23 years old. It was one of the greatest individual performances football had ever seen on the biggest stage imaginable. And somehow, France still lost. As Argentina celebrated one of the most emotional victories in football history, Mbappé walked past the trophy carrying the pain of defeat on his shoulders. But something strange had happened that night. Even in defeat, Mbappé somehow felt larger than the moment itself. Because while Messi completed his story, Mbappé proved his story was only beginning. The world no longer saw him as simply the next big player. Now he looked inevitable. A superstar capable of taking over games no human should be able to control. A player built for pressure. A player built for football history. And after that final, one thing became impossible to ignore. The kid who once watched Cristiano Ronaldo highlights alone in his bedroom had become the most dangerous player on the planet. For years, Kylian Mbappé chased one dream. Not money, not fame, not headlines. Real Madrid, the same club he visited as a teenager. The same club where he once stood beside Cristiano Ronaldo as a nervous young fan trying to hide his excitement. Back then, he looked like a kid living inside a fantasy. Now, he was arriving as football's biggest superstar. But the journey to get there changed him completely. The quiet boy from Bondy became a global icon carrying the pressure of an entire generation. He experienced fame most players could never imagine. He dealt with criticism, ego accusations, impossible expectations, and the weight of constantly being compared to legends before even reaching his prime. And through all of it, he kept evolving. Faster, deadlier, more confident, more ruthless. By the time Real Madrid finally secured his signature, Mbappé was no longer chasing Cristiano Ronaldo's legacy. He had built his own, because somewhere along the way, football stopped asking whether Mbappé could become the next Ronaldo or Messi. Instead, the world started asking a different question. How far can he actually go? Ballon d'Ors, Champions Leagues, World Cups, football immortality. For the first time in nearly 20 years, the sport truly feels like it belongs to a new generation. And standing at the center of it all is the kid from Bondy, who once covered his bedroom walls with Ronaldo posters. The boy who dreamed bigger than everyone around him. The boy who refused to fear pressure. The boy who turned obsession into greatness. Kylian Mbappé is no longer chasing football history. He's becoming it.